I'm speaking to you, well, as Jill said, my name is Beth Berghan. I live on the Sunshine Coast in Queensland in Australia, and it's my pleasure and my privilege to be here today to share my presentation with you. I'm speaking to you as leaders. I'm speaking to you as people who can influence and who do play a part in determining the culture of organisations. And the reason that it's important for me to talk to you as leaders about disruption is because I believe that you must, and in fact you should, start the conversation about disruption in your organisations. If you are a coach, you should be starting it with your clients and encouraging them to start it in their organisation. But before I start talking to you about the disruption mindset, what I'd like to do is to just share with you some information about me and how I actually got to be standing here in front of you, a whole bunch of my peers, a long way from home. So I've always been an educator, a leader and a facilitator, and I've developed and delivered a really wide range of programs for unemployed people, for people who are employed, for Indigenous Australians, and for a whole range of cultural diversities. I have 25 years as a small business owner, and when that's coupled together with 20 years in the public sector, including as a faculty director in a large vocational education institution, it puts me in a really unique position of being able to combine that kind of corporate life and that public sector with the private enterprise and the entrepreneurial approach that's required to be successful in business. And so I find for many of my clients, and I've worked across a lot of industries in financial planning, with clients in financial planning, in the hospitality industry, in retail, and also in service clubs and employment services. And what I find is that because I combine those two things together, I bring a really unique perspective, a perspective that's a bit different to what they're used to. And when that's combined with how damn curious I am, that drives people crazy because I ask them lots of questions. The other thing that's really important to me is serving my community. Contribution and giving back is really important to me, and so I bring that with me as well. I'm a business and executive success coach, I'm a leadership consultant, I'm a facilitator, a speaker, I'm a disruptor, and I'm a mother, which means that, you know, kind of you disrupt everything, don't you, as you go along as a parent. So I want to talk to you about why I'm discussing these 6 disruption mindsets with you. The first reason is I want you and your organisations to be staying ahead of the pack. I want you to give yourself, that one's not going to come up, I don't know why that's supposed to say, give yourself permission to be great, to be powerful, to stand in your power. I also want you to understand that when you begin this conversation about disruption, you're going to have to take it slowly. It may be about bringing just one person or one team across the line at a time. And finally, I want to give you the courage, the kick in the butt, whatever it requires to start this conversation about disruption. Okay? So, before we talk about those 6 disruption mindsets, I want to identify what disruption is for the purposes of my discussion. So I figured I'd start by talking about what it's not. It's different from change. Change is a constant thing. Change is happening all the time. And the reason I've got the picture of the telephone up there is to show you a really good example of what's going on with change. It took 100 years for the telephone to have 100 million subscribers. How long do you reckon it took WhatsApp? 3 years. That's the kind of change that's happening around us. So that it's constant. It's different from disruption. Disruption is not innovation. Innovation is a small tweak It might be a 15%, 10 to 15% change. And what it does is it's about improving something so that it's slightly faster, slightly better, slightly cheaper. Okay? So what is this disruption stuff then? Well, for the purposes of this activity, or this presentation, we're talking about it as a deliberate thing. It's a disturbance or problems that interrupt an event, an activity, or something that's going on. It's about changing the game. So it's something that you're doing deliberately. Now, you might not cause the disturbance or the problem deliberately. You don't want the problems necessarily to come deliberately. However, because you're creating the environment, and we'll talk about this a bit more in a moment, because you're creating that environment, the disturbance or the problem will occur. And you've created an environment and a culture in your organisation where it's welcomed. Okay? So, let's have some examples of disruption. I know how crazy some people in this room are probably about cricket, and Greta referred to it earlier. The English county cricket, a number of years ago, had the attendance at cricket games had really gone down. So they put some smart brains, some smart cricket brains in the same room, and they came up with a total disruption to cricket. They turned a 5-day game into a game that lasts between 3 or 4 hours. Now that game has totally taken the world by storm. We now have the T20, it's called. In Australia we have the Big Bash. In India there's the IPL. There's the Pakistani and the Bangladesh have teams, and I'm sure the English probably have one as well. Importantly for India, you won the first World Cup and you beat the Pakistanis by just 5 runs. Okay? That's a disruption, something totally different. Another example, I don't know why that one's not coming up either. Flipkart, which is the Indian answer to Amazon. And initially, a whole lot of outside people were brought in to run that company. And when they finally saw that it made sense to put an Indian in charge, he got rid of a whole bunch of those people, took out about 60% of them, developed a culture in the organisation that meant that he could then promote internally. And the organisation is now going great guns. So he totally disrupted it. The third one is Jeff Bezos and Amazon. Now, Amazon has disrupted and reinvented itself a whole lot. I don't want to talk about that so much as I want to refer to Jeff Bezos. He self-disrupted. He gave up a perfectly good job and moved from one side of the States to the other because in his mind, he believed there were massive opportunities around this thing called the internet. He's now the richest man in the world. And Amazon keeps on reinventing itself. Other examples that you'll be familiar with are Uber, taken over the taxis or taxi in many countries. Netflix, which just wiped out Blockbuster Video. And also Airbnb, which is really impacting on the traditional hotel and motel industry. And many governments are now making laws that you have to pay taxes and do all sorts of other things if you're doing Airbnb. So what have I learned about disruption? What have I learned from my experience at working with individual clients, at working with small business owners, with executives, and with teams in a number of different industries? Well, the first thing I've learned is that it all comes down to you. It all starts with you. Your approach has to change, no matter what your role in the organisation is, because I believe that you can lead from any seat in the organisation. So when your approach changes, what will happen is that your leadership then influences your team, and obviously that then rolls out and it impacts on your clients. Let's start by looking at the first mindset shift. The first one is begin by disrupting yourself. Now, what do I mean by this? It's about putting yourself somewhere where you can think. It's about stepping outside of your comfort zone. It's about being prepared to take risks so that what you can do is feed that creativity and those big decisions that you're going to want to make, right? So that you've got time to actually think of those things. This is where you can be open and honest with yourself because you're not dealing with the stress that comes up every single day at work. You've taken some time out to do that. The second thing is that you need to learn to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. Because if you're going to be the lead disruptor, you can't be saying all the time, wait a minute, no, we can't do that, that's too risky. You have to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. So take unconventional routes to get to where you want to. Do things differently. Do things differently on purpose. Go home tonight and clean your teeth with the other hand. Feel how uncomfortable that is. Right? Simple things like that. Don't always do things the same way. Continue to adapt flexibly all the time. And really importantly, think about this S-curve. Now, if you don't know about the S-curve, we start something new. That steepest part is where there's lots and lots of learning, and then we get to the top and we kind of plateau. And that's where we get comfortable, and that's where we get complacent, and that's where we're not challenged anymore. So if you're going to self-disrupt, what you need to be prepared to do is to jump off the top there down to the bottom of another S-curve so that you're challenging yourself and away you go. If you're in HR, you can probably look around you and see lots of people who are in jobs where they're plateauing. They need a new challenge. They need a new S-curve to have a look at. Learn more about disruption and disruption styles of leadership. And there's a really awesome one that I talk to my clients about a lot, which is called the 3 boxes. And you can just Google that one if you want to. But basically what it says is in box 1, we're managing the present. In box 2, we're selectively letting go or changing things in the past. And in box 3, we're creating our future. Number 2, lean out rather than leaning in. Now, we've heard a lot about leaning in, which is all about being in charge, being assertive, controlling the situation. Leaning out is different from that. Leaning out is recognizing you don't have complete control of the circumstance. You don't have all of the answers. Lean out and collaborate with other people. Because once you start collaborating with other people, boy oh boy, some cracker ideas come out of that. Because you're working with other people. You're working with other organisations who have a whole lot more of those answers that you might need. You bring together a collaboration like pieces of a jigsaw puzzle, yeah? Number 3, hire some new people. Or think about disrupting your team by shifting them to new positions and new challenges. Now, whenever we think about this, there's always a tension between what do we do? Do we promote internally or do we hire new people? And as we saw earlier, Flipkart, has got both sides of that. So when we hire internally, the challenge is that we can just be hiring a mistake. Like it's the same behaviours that come with us. They stay there, they bring those behaviours up. So if this is what you decide to do, then you're going to need strong leadership, really strong leadership, to provide guidance to help these people to grow and to change into their new role. Okay? When we hire externally, what's really awesome about them is that they can bring fresh eyes. But most of us don't want to hear. We spend our whole life saying, don't tell me about what you did in your old job. I don't want to know about that. So if we're going to hire internally, we've got to be prepared to talk to them about what they were doing in their last role. so that we can hopefully learn from their insights and learn from those mistakes. Okay? Next one, number 4, the freedom to fail without being a failure. Now you, in your leadership roles, need to give yourself permission to do this first of all. Because if you don't give yourself permission to do this, then how are you going to build a culture around this? You really want to be building a culture where your team are encouraged to innovate, to try new things, safe in the knowledge that some of those things aren't going to work. But that's okay. Now, in many organisations, our focus is on finding someone to blame when we make a mistake, isn't it? I'm sure all of you have worked or are aware of organisations where that happens. What we've got to be prepared to do, and this is why you've got to give yourself permission to fail without being a failure, what we've got to be able to do is to acknowledge that this was a mistake, but to also recognise, hey, there are some lessons in this. We identify those lessons, we learn from them, and we give it another go, looking a little bit different from how it looked the first time we did it. Okay? The person is not a failure. Whatever the project was, or whatever this new thing was that you were trying, might have failed in that version. You learn the lesson and you apply them and give it another try. A lot of research has shown that being able to fail, when you talk to employees about what they consider to be one of their highest, the highest positives about working with various organisations, that being able to fail is something that they look out for. And when you give your employees permission to fail, that's where innovation and disruption will take place. Okay? I just wanted to add one more thing to this point, and that's this. Changing your mind based on available evidence is not a weakness. It's a sensible thing to do. It's perfectly all right to encourage this environment where people can fail, but you don't want to keep on letting them fail and fail and fail and fail and fail, because they'll start to believe they are a failure then. If it's not working, acknowledge that it's a mistake and pivot. Shift away from it. Do something different. Okay, number 5. This is my favourite one. I love this one. We must fall in love with our client and out of love with our product. Why is this, you might ask? Because we have all of this training that says we need to know our product. We've got to have product knowledge. It gets hammered into us, yeah? The reason that we need to fall out of love with our product is our product is always going to change. We wouldn't have a product if we didn't have clients. So we need to start falling in love with our clients because they are the reason that we exist. We need to anticipate what our clients' needs are. And when we can do that, our business will grow. So here are some key questions that I give to my clients, and we work through these so that they can identify what their clients might need. The first one of these is this: what problems are you solving for your client? It seems like a simple question. Lots of people don't understand the answer to that. What problems are you solving for your client? This is key. Now, another way of you asking this is to say, what would I like someone to do for me? What would save me some time? What would save me some money? So flip it around so that you're talking about what would you like for you. Then ask yourself, what business am I really in? Yesterday was Valentine's Day. What business are florists really in? I know they're in retail and they sell flowers, but they also sell, or they also give us the opportunity to share our emotions. So the business they're in is sharing emotions. Most of us have vehicles, and those vehicles need to be fueled up. What business are service stations really in? Yes, I know it's retail, and they sell fuel and a whole range of other things, but they're actually in the business of keeping us moving. And so we don't want to spend half an hour waiting to fill our car up, do we? Okay? T20. What business are they really in? We think it's sport. No way. It's entertainment. They want to get your dollars out. Right? They want you to have a really fine time being entertained. These are critical questions. I found with my client who had a team of 7 and was working, she owned her own financial planning business. When she really started to ask her staff this, they changed the whole suite of services and the way they charge for those services that they were offering their clients. It also meant that what happened was that some clients who were lower paying dropped off the bottom, but they were the clients who were taking up the most of their time anyway, and they weren't getting a return on their money. The third vital question here is, can you build a solution for a problem that people will buy? So if you've gone through that key question of what problem are you solving, if you've shifted it down to what business are you really in, you can then come up with a whole range of new products because you've fallen in love with your client. You're not so attached to the product. How many of you have held on to products for way too long? Oh, we've always sold this one, we can't get rid of that. So we hold on to it. Okay, the really great thing about this is that most times people don't know what they want until you show them. So think about that question. What problem are you solving? It's really important. Okay, final one. Break free from one-size-fits-all mentality. What does this mean? In all of our organisations and all of our lives, there's a common catch cry around this. That's how we do things around here. We've always done it this way, yeah? So what we need to do is to break free from that. And that means you've got to be more agile and more responsive. As a coach, as a leader in your organisation, you must be more agile and more responsive because one size doesn't fit all. It's really about our clients saying to us, or us saying to our clients, you want it, we'll do it. I'm amazed at the number of coaches that I talk to who say, oh look, I'm going to coach 3 days a week between 3 p.m. and 7 p.m. and that's it. Too bad about that person who needs to speak to you at 8:30 a.m. on a Sunday because that's the day that suits them best. It's all about they want, you do. It doesn't mean you have to compromise the balance in your own life, but you do need to be responsive to your clients. In an organisation, this is where you might consider a pilot or a trial. Just imagine, I was talking to someone the other day who said, they'd moved to a really remote area and started a new job on a 2-year contract, and the local supermarket didn't sell a whole lot of stuff that they ate. And I said, well, go in and talk to them. You work in the health industry. You can influence whether a whole lot of this stuff is sold in the future or not because you'll be working with clients. They went in. The supermarket was more than happy to begin accommodating. It's a pilot or a trial for them. So be prepared to take that risk. It's a one-stop approach. But it's not that old one-stop where you stop here and we squash you into shape and you've got to take this version. It's actually where it's personalised and it's individual. Okay, let's take a quick look at what we've covered. Begin by disrupting yourself. It all starts with you. So be prepared to get out of that comfort zone and take some risks. The second one was lean out rather than leaning in. There is a flyer somewhere. I think I gave it to the guys at the front desk down there. Oh, great. Okay. Yeah, hand those around. That'd be awesome. And these are on the back of the flyer. Lean out rather than leaning in so that you are collaborating with people. Hire some new people. If it's not possible to hire externally, promote internally. Freedom to fail without being a failure. Start by giving yourself permission to do this. Fall in love with your client and out of love with your product. Your products are going to keep on changing. And finally, break free from one size fits all. Bingo! We've got to have disruption. Okay, just to finish off, there are 4 powerful questions that I ask my clients to run through as well. And these are also on the flyer. This is a tricky question. It's a really powerful one. And what you'll find is that you need to ask this of yourself 3 or 4 times. Ask it once, write down your answer, ask it again, wait for the answer to come, because each time you ask it, you're going to get closer to the real truth of it. Where are you tolerating average thought and average leadership from yourself? How can you be a role model for others if you're being a bit average? Where could you be disrupting this thinking? So this is about encouraging you to begin that journey of self-disruption. You may need to find a coach to help you with that. Even coaches should be coached. Where can you and your team be disruptors? Look for some places that you can actually disrupt what's going on. It doesn't have to be massive. It can be small and really effective. And the final one is, how can you influence and encourage positive disruption in your company? How can you begin that conversation about disruption? Thank you. It's been my pleasure to be here with you.